Hello everyone, welcome to LWI Remembers, a special project sponsored by LWI's Institutional Memory Project. My name is Abigail Perdue, and I'm the current president of the Legal Writing Institute, and it's my great pleasure to have with me today two legends of legal writing, Laurel Oates and Chris Rideout. Laurel was one of the co-founders of the Legal Writing Institute and also one of the organizers of the first biennial for the Legal Writing Institute. In 2025, LWI actually renamed its influential teaching award in honor of Laurel. She's also one of founders of Seattle University's Legal Writing Program, which is one of the most prestigious writing programs in the nation. She directed that program from 1982 until 2012 and still teaches in the program. She's also the co-author of 5 books: The Legal Writing Handbook, Just Research, Just Memos, Just Briefs, and Just Writing. And she's also the recipient of many well-deserved awards and accolades, among them the Burton Award for Outstanding Contributions to Legal Writing and the Marjorie Rombauer Award for Contributions to the Teaching of Legal Writing. Thank you so much, Laurel, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we also have with us J. Chris Rideout, who's a retired professor who formerly taught at Seattle University School of Law. From 1981 to 1984, he co-directed a regional writing project funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And as an outgrowth of that project, he, along with Laurel, helped to co-found the Legal Writing Institute, helped to organize the first LWI biennial, and also served as the president of the Legal Writing Institute. Later, he served as a founding editor-in-chief of the journal, Legal Writing, and he's also mentored others through his work as a mentor and facilitator with the Writers' Workshop, sponsored by LWI. In 2009, Chris received the Mary S. Lawrence Award in recognition of his countless contributions to legal writing scholarship. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. It's an honor to have you both with us. I wanted to start by asking you just to share, what was it like to teach legal writing in those early days before the founding of the Legal Writing Institute?
I started in August of 1980, and that was an important year for legal writing at what was then the University of Puget Sound, now Seattle University. There were 5 of us who were on 2-year contracts. 3 of them were in the second year of their contract. Another fellow and I were in our first year. And instead of having an entering class of 300, there had been some kind of problems with the LSAT distribution of scores, and we ended up actually admitting 450 students, which meant my first year of teaching, I was trained as an elementary school teacher, but my first year of teaching at a law school, I had 90 students, 2 sections of 45. It was overwhelming. The entire school was overwhelmed trying to serve this additional group of students. Essentially, nobody was in charge. There was an associate dean who, when there was a problem, would step in. But otherwise, we could come up with our own assignments, our own grading standards, our own class plans. Luckily, we were a relatively collegial group and we shared information. But perhaps the hardest thing that first year was there was really no textbook that worked. We had Marjorie's and Lynn Squire's nutshell on legal writing, which was helpful. But we were creating content for our students, both in the form of reading assignments and in the form of assignments for them to work on. The legal writing program at then UPS had evolved from no legal writing program, just a research course, to a course taught by adjuncts, to a course taught by recent graduates on the short-term contracts, of which I was one. And needless to say, none of the short-term contract people had any status. We were considered instructors. The day that I came on, the associate dean explained to me that I could stay no more than 2 years and that under no conditions could I teach law. I wasn't really sure how I could teach legal writing without there being some law. But once you go in your classroom, you do what you need to do to get your students where they need to be. Grading, critiquing 90 papers without any kind of training in how to critique papers was clearly a challenge. It was a very personal kind of opinion of whether I thought the paper was good or I didn't think the paper was good with a little bit of why. And we also at about the same time got a new dean and Chris came on board and Chris understood kind of the pedagogy of teaching writing. So Chris, why don't you take over?
I didn't go to law school. I went to graduate school in English and got a PhD. I started graduate school in 1973, and I was very fortunate to get a teaching fellowship. The department at that university was responsible for freshman writing, and it used graduate teaching fellows to teach those courses. So I taught my first college writing course in 1973 when I was 23 years old. A lot of the students in the class were older than I was. 5 years later, in 1978, I had finished all my coursework, all my exams. I was working on my dissertation. And unbelievably, I got a full-time job at a small liberal arts college just south of Seattle called the University of Puget Sound. I couldn't believe it. There were no jobs then. They hired me because they liked me, I think, and maybe thought I knew something. But they also had a freshman writing requirement for every incoming student. The program had kind of slipped a little bit, and they wanted somebody young, bright, and bushy-tailed to come in and take responsibility for it. So I started doing that in 1978. And at that time, I was writing my dissertation on a literary subject, but I was really interested in teaching writing. And there was kind of a shift in the way writing was taught at the college level. So my first year, I wrote a 200-page handbook and gave a copy to everyone in the department. I don't think they read it, but I was learning a lot. So in 1981, summer of 1981, the dean of the law school was new. They had hired a new dean. He was a take charge, fix things kind of person. We loved him. His name was Fred Towson. And he called the dean of the university and said, what was it? Oh, the dean, his name was Shady. Can you imagine having a dean named Shady? The Shady, I want you to send someone from the English department down to the law school to help with our legal writing program. So Shady took me out to lunch and asked me if I was interested. And I said, sure. And I'll tell you why. I was responsible for the freshman writing program at the university level, but I didn't believe in it. Most of the people were really teaching literature and having the students write papers about literature. I was interested in the process approach to teaching writing. I realized in graduate school very early on that in teaching writing, I was really teaching thinking. I mean, you can tell them where to put the commas and how to construct a thesis, but really you were teaching them thinking, and that was my big entree into all this research that was being done. And by the time I got to this job at the University of Puget Sound, I was interested in a movement called the Writing Across the Curriculum movement, which meant you were teaching thinking as well as writing, and you were helping students enter a discourse domain, like history or economics or whatever, law. And I had joined a group of other people in the Pacific Northwest, and we were applying for a federal grant to work on writing across the curriculum at our universities, a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So when Shady said to me, do you want to go for part of your appointment to the law school? I leaped at the chance because this was perfect for teaching writing and context. And so Laurel and I joined forces in the summer of 1981 and began to revise the legal writing program there, first using the process approach to teaching writing. The older approach, stereotyped badly, would be, here's a legal memorandum, here are its parts, now go write one. And we were interested in working with the students in the process of writing one. At the pre-writing stage, research. At the writing stage, multiple drafts, working with the students on their drafts. The process approach changed your pedagogy, your teaching style as well. We ended up having writing conferences with students. You divide students into small groups in the classroom and have them work with each other on their drafts. They do multiple drafts, that kind of stuff. So Laurel and I went to work, and I have to say at this point that when I met Laurel, I was thrilled because she's very smart. She's a naturally gifted teacher, and she really took to these materials. So we had a great time that first summer, 1981, just revising the way legal writing was taught at the law school.
It sounds like you were not just developing a program for legal writing, but a legal writing pedagogy. You didn't have teaching assistants.
No.
We had no research or scholarship requirements. No one could conceive that you do research and scholarship in legal writing. But no, we did have a supportive dean. I have to say that. I think Laurel would agree with that.
Very much so.
What about your colleague that didn't teach legal writing? Were they supportive of your endeavors?
Again, things had been such a disaster the prior year that they seemed to be interested in what we were doing to fix it. And many of them were interested in having good students who could write well. But as far as having a legal writing program or having tenure track, legal writing professors, no. We were instructors. We were there for a short term. So they were not particularly invested in us and our careers.
And the contracts that you were on were not presumptively renewable. You were told you have 2 years and you have to go. Is that right?
That's correct. By the second year, though, things had turned around. The dean appointed Chris and I to stay with the program and kind of figure out a way to create a program that was workable and provided good results, and that the rest of the faculty could actually see the results of what we were doing.
I agree pretty much with Laurel. At the very beginning of the program, we had no job security. We didn't know from year to year what was going to happen. I had this joint appointment, so I always figured if things ended at the law school, I'd go back full-time to the English department. We had the dean on our side, and I think we worked very hard for those first few years. We worked quite hard, including during the summers, and people took notice of that.
For no
And they
pay.
saw, for no pay, yes, we worked during the summer for no pay. People took notice of that, and I think they knew or sensed that we weren't just people that came in off the street and started teaching writing and telling people where commas went. We had a conceptual structure for what we were doing. And they respected that. And to be honest with you, I think in different ways, both Laurel and I were pretty friendly people. So we just kind of made friends with people on the faculty. But there was no guarantee of anything there.
What did the fall look like now that you had infused it with some of your innovations?
Well, it was much more theory-oriented. We had adopted the process approach. We had students doing multiple drafts. We were meeting with students one-on-one. Luckily, we didn't have those huge classes in that year, so this was actually something that was feasible for us to do.
What was the class size in the fall? What did it shrink down to?
I think it shrunk to 60 students from 90. So it was still a lot of students. And when you start talking about doing conferencing, it's a lot of conferencing. I must say it was good that we were young and we had energy. to talk longer than maybe we could talk today with students. I mean, they were basically our age, most of them, are just a few years older. We had an evening program, so a few years older. But yeah, we redid the syllabus, and I must say, with our first year syllabus, we've redone it off and on for 20 years, trying to find, should we start with a short memo? Should we start with a client letter? Should we start with a research project? Of trying to find that perfect way to introduce legal writing to first year students. Down the road a few years, we got a second year course, and the second year syllabus that we developed has not changed in 30 years. We still use the same syllabus because whatever formula we came up with that, which incorporated all the things that Chris was teaching us, really made a difference in the students' ability to do this particular project in a meaningful way. So, but the first year curriculum, we've tried every doing it, but it's always been based on active learning, cooperative learning, focusing on the process, focusing on decision making, on making judgments about what to include, what not to include in a memo. So the thinking process that goes into it. Thinking, the mantra that I always use is audience, purpose, and conventions. And if they cannot recite that in their sleep by the end of my course, I have failed. But most of them can. So that's worthwhile. But
The
UPS
other thing that, oh,
it was a brand new law school, and we had some of the best and brightest students that you could find at any law school in the country. So we learned, how can we teach all of the whole group of them and not just to the top or the middle or the bottom?
Laurel and I made it more of a program. So summer workshops when they came in, but we had weekly workshops with the instructors, and we had put together a master syllabus over the summer. So we
And
had a
class
much better
sheets.
coordinated program.
Was the legal writing course at that time a year-long course?
Yeah, 2 semesters initially, eventually 3 semesters. Originally 3 credits in the first year. It's now up to 6 and 3 credits in the second year.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really can't put into words what an impact that you've had on every single person who teaches legal writing. We're all better professors, we're better teachers, better scholars because of your work. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you, Abby, for continuing the Institute and for all your work.
Yeah, and for this particular project, I know it's a big project. This is just the very beginning of the Institute, but it has a long 40-year history.